We begin with the Daily Trust newspaper on our dailies today. The lead story says, North's out-of-school children population time bomb. That's according to the federal government. North's out-of-school children population time bomb. You have the writers to that story. It says 680,000 in Kaduna, over 500,000 in Gombe. And another writer there, Bauchi mobilizing resources for educational projects, says Bala Muhammad. 3,963 teachers in public schools fail qualifying exam nationwide. Over 50% of private schools teachers unqualified. TRCN on page 4. Now, above the lead story, abducted 150 Maru villagers, 3 dead as bandits remain silent on ransom. That's on page 3. You also have Bayelsa, Kebbi, Taraba. Others can't survive without FAC disbursements, according to report on page 23. So, talking about states that can generate internal revenue in a way that they can be self-sustaining. These states are not among those states, so they need federal allocation for them to be able to survive, to pay salaries and so on. So this is what that report is saying. That the states are Bayelsa, Kebbi, Taraba, among others. Now, other stories there. Tinubu pledges to review policies on newspaper industry. Yesterday, we saw the president meeting with members of MPAN, Nigerian, Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, where he had that meeting and deliberations with, some of the newspaper proprietors, including the chairman of Media Trust Group. You also have other stories there. Resigned commissioners to return as Tinubu resolves Wike Fubara feud on page 6. Other stories. Kano Gover tussle. Supreme Court fixes hearing for Thursday on page 12. Sponsored Nigerian students in foreign institutions absconding. And that's according to TED Fund on page 34. So you have students sponsored for their high level of education abroad, and then they abscond. You can imagine after paying that much. The Nigerian government gets to pay the fees, gets to carry the burden. Again, it gets ditched at the end of the day. Well, that's unfortunate. Another story, over 1,000 Nigerians scammed with fake UK jobs, says IOM. These are the main stories on Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper this morning. From the top of the page, it says INEC fixes by-elections into Senate, House, others for February. The Catholic Church okays blessing for same-sex couples. You find that on page 4. Budget 2024. Committee is ordered to submit report. Benin, Niger, Togo owe Nigeria $11.16 million electricity bill. Below the headlines there, we have 2 die in Alao Akala's house fire. Ministry converses Soul Day celebration. Perform or be fired. That's according to Tinubu. And he tells the NNPCL board treats Niger Delta with better care. The major story says Fubara Wike strike deal. Warren camp sign 8-point agreement after presidential intervention. We have President pledges ease of doing newspaper business. The NPAN leaders at Aso Rock. Below the belt there says Presidential CNG Initiatives Committee unable to account for palliatives cash. Now these are some of the stories on the front page of The Nation this morning. All right, let's move on to the Guardian newspaper this morning. The major story says Nigerians may burn over 1.5 trillion naira on cooking gas in 2024 amid incentives. And there is a breakdown of how that is gonna happen. So if you want to get the details of that, you can pick the Guardian newspaper this morning. Now, beside that, we have Nigeria's delegation of COP28 insensitive to economic reality. 3.5 billion naira debt, court freezes Oyo government account in 10 banks. Irrigation, agriculture, experts recommend new land administration method. Energia Owando JV commission multi-billion naira project in Delta. We have below that, breakdown of the gas, cooking gas, situation. We see LCCI raises concern on inflation prices and charges the CBN on new approach. I mean, there's a lot of expectations on the CBN. Tinubu meets newspaper proprietors, promises press freedom and others. Senate gives panel 48 hours to submit 2024 budget report. INEC plans reruns by election for February 2024. And Tinubu brokers truce as Fubara Wiki sign peace agreements. These are some of the stories on the Guardian newspaper this morning.
All
Now
right.
let's move.
All right, so let's take a look at the Punch newspaper, where you have the lead story. National Assembly may pass budget Saturday, 541 MDAs and defense. You have above the lead story, or rather, let's take a look at the riders to that. Senate reps to harmonize appropriation bill, Saturday for passage, Senate spokesman says. You have committees submitting reports. January to December budget cycle will be sustained, says committee chair. Above the lead story, Fubara Wike reached truce as Tinubu intervenes again. Lagos government congratulates Punch on NMMA awards. Pope Francis okays blessings for same-sex couples. There you have another controversial issue. Tinubu to review policies affecting newspaper industry. Editors launch trust fund. You also have 800 billion naira illicit drugs seized. 42,105 offenders nabbed, says Marwa, the NDLEA chair. Husband kills wife over food in Lagos. 2 killed as fire raises late Alao Akala's residence. So these are the main stories on the Punch newspaper this morning.
All right, let's move on to News Direct newspaper this morning. The top of the page says Nigeria's revenue increased by 181.82 billion naira in November. That's according to the FAC. Wike Fubara reached truces. Tinubu resolves conflict. You find that on page 3. Banks' liquidity plunges to 300.68 billion naira in August 2023. That's the CBN report. Bottlenecks in federal tax policies limiting Lagos internal generated revenue. That's according to Sanwo-Olu. The major story, it says, I won't allow businesses die on my watch. According to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, hints on granting waivers to airline road transport operators in festive season as the newspaper proprietors seek tax waivers to cushion rising costs. You find that story on page 3. We have about food security. Naseni signs MOU to kickstart production of coal-based fertilizer in Nigeria. That's, a great step to take towards tackling food insecurity. Now, these are some of the stories on Nigerian News Direct.
Right. So let's take a look at the Daily Sun newspaper. You have the lead story there. It says EC report. Kebbi, Akwa Ibom, Katsina, top states with poorest IGR. Lagos ranks first with 650 billion naira. Rivers, 172 billion naira. Delta, 85 billion naira. And Anambra, 33 billion naira. Other stories. Peter Obi alleges threat to life for refusing to accept bribe. Two fear death as fire engulfs residents of ex-Oyo governor Akala. You also have other stories. INEC may conduct 2023 rerun elections, by-elections in February. These are the main stories on the Daily Sun newspaper. All right. So let's get some perspectives to these stories that we just read out on the front pages of our newspapers. We have in the studio Dr. Theophilus Abba, the Director of Programs, Daily Trust Foundation, for perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
You're welcome. All right. Well, quite a number of stories this morning and a lot of developments. Before we delve into some of the stories, we've touched on it earlier, the political impasse in Rivers State. There's a new development to that. Resolutions have been taken, about 8 of them, and it's dominating headlines this morning. How sustainable do you think that those resolutions will be in the coming days?
Well, what happened in Rivers, I don't know whether it is now in the past form or whether it's a continuous issue, but what has happened in Rivers State is an embarrassment to our democracy, because apparently there is an overbearing influence of one man over a whole state, as if it were a personal estate. And, the governor coming on that threat, barely 6 months after he was sworn in, threat of impeachment, and the constitution says that, look, there must be gross violation of the law, and we are not even sure of what law he had violated before the impeachment threat. It's quite unfortunate. But it was a positive development yesterday that the president intervened, directly intervened. So we are advocating that, look, this the face-off was political, and then there has to be a political solution to it. So it's quite encouraging that the president decided to step in.
Yeah, but then I'm sure there are those who are loyal to Fubara that perhaps will be having some mixed feelings as regards some of the content of the resolutions. For instance, there's only one that talks about all impeachment proceedings that were initiated against Fubara should be withdrawn immediately and suspended.
Yes.
That's the only thing that you can say, oh, it's in the favor of Governor Fubara. How will he be able to work with people who have clearly shown their loyalty to former Governor Nyesom Wike in his cabinet and even the legislative arm?
Now, the other, the major thing was the impeachment, the threat to remove him from his seat as governor. That was the major issue. Now, every other person, from what we are reading, every other person in that government, including Fabura himself, came there, because there was a godfather that brought them. You understand? Now, being able to work with them is actually a political thing. Now, even if they move to APC, I think that was one of the steps they were taking, all of them moving to APC. If they move to APC, I don't know if it will be difficult to work with them, because the fact that they've been together, it's not like they are strangers to each other. They've been together, they were in the same campaign. All of them were brought on board by one political movement in Rivers State. So they will have to find a political solution to that. It's something that all of them will need to sit down.
Will that political solution be in the favor of the people of Rivers State?
Well, that is the major issue, because we have discovered that, like I said earlier, it's like somebody has declared Rivers as his own personal estate. And then if what is being done is not in the interest of the people of Rivers State, then it is a different thing altogether. Because we expect that the governor and all the members of the House of Assembly must design their program, must act in a manner that will be in favor of the people. But the face-off was not because the interest of the people was at stake. That was not why the face-off was. The face-off was because of personal interest. And that's what we must condemn as Nigerians. Because if the people have elected Fubara as governor, even if it's somebody that was his godfather who propped him up, and the people have said, okay, this is the person we want as our governor, they voted for him, then he must be allowed to work as governor.
Okay.
And the House of Assembly must also work in tandem with whatever policies is coming up with.
Talking about that, earlier you mentioned that Fubara needs to find, a way to work with these people. But at this point, should he sleep with his eyes, one eye open? Considering we know how important it is for an elected person. We saw the president, how he took his time, to carve out his own cabinet. So definitely right now, Fubara knows that he's not holding the rail to this journey. So should he be concern of any future situations like this coming up, of this impeachment threat?
Now, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking is this: with the intervention of the president, I think the intervention is the beginning, of the settlement of the face-off between Fubara and the House of Assembly members, or let me say between Fubara and Wike. It should be the beginning. It should be, because the baseline is that there should be no impeachment. But I'm thinking that every other thing can be worked out. That is my own feeling. Every other thing can be worked out, because they are all politicians. They come from the same political family. They can look at themselves in the face and say, look, you have done this. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. There will have to be amendments. So we expect to see more resolution, more agreement among these feuding parties.
Well, hopefully we get to hear, see positive results, yielding for the sake of the people of River State. Now, Doctor, let's move on to the major story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, saying the not out of school children population is a ticking time bomb. That's according to the federal government. Now, one of the fear of the federal government is this jackpot syndrome that has been going on, where we saw example of health workers, we don't have enough of them. And the federal government were pushing for universities to, produce more graduates in order to fill up this vacant position. But if we're even starting from the primary school and we're not even having enough, how can we navigate, to reach to that point of at least Nigeria retaining that human resources that we keep bragging about? And plus the insecurity. What's your take on this large number? Because there's about 680,000 in Kaduna. We have 500,000 in Gombe State, and other, situations happening like that.
Well, we are reading a lot of statistics about out-of-school children in Nigeria. And there's actually a policy, the national policy on education. And the policy is saying that every child, between the age of, let's say, 5 and 12 must be in school. That means that from primary school, minimum you must be in primary, and you must have both primary and junior secondary education. That's the policy. Now, the problem we have is this. In spite of the fact that this policy has been put in place for a very long time now, we have not seen a serious enforcement of the policy. And that's why we have out-of-school children. Because it presupposes that every child should have access to free basic education. That means that if this child is in school, he may not need to buy textbooks, may not need to pay school fees. Then there's the school feeding program. Now, if you look at the national policy on education and you back law, you see it is a law, that school children minimum basic education should be given 1 meal in a day. It's actually in that document, in that policy document. And now the major issue is the government has not seriously enforced this policy, because if you enforce this policy, parents will be compelled. There should be a punitive punishment for not allowing your child to be at school. If you find your child on the road hawking, what do you call it, granite, hawking akamu, hawking akara, when you ought to be at school, there should be something to be done to you. But you see, we'll keep talking about out-of-school children. Over the years, we've been asking maybe World Bank or several international organizations to give us money to take them. We've written policy documents, all sorts of things have been done. Desk work has been, a lot of desk work has been done on out-of-school children. But we have not seen deliberate policy attempt to say, okay, we found 200 children on the street of Kaduna. They were supposed to be at school. They are not at school. And so who are their parents? We are going to arrest them, prosecute them. It has not happened. You see, every morning when you wake up and see these children hawking one to another, you begin to ask yourself, why should it be so? But some will tell you that, they are because of the economic situation, they are helping their parents to generate income. It doesn't stand, it's not an argument.
Okay.
So I think we have not backed up this policy with enough enforcement. And that's why we have so many out-of-school children.
That's also other staggering statistics that we're seeing on the front page this morning. Even for those who managed to go to the school, for the children who are sent to the school by their parents and so on, to the public schools, there's still a problem. We're seeing the numbers here: 3,963 teachers in public schools fail qualifying exam nationwide. Other statistics by the TRC and the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria, I believe, says over 50% of private schools teachers are unqualified. So it's not only the public schools, even in the private schools, we are talking about how qualitative, is the education that children are acquiring in our schools, and so on.
Okay, now there are two issues. Now we're talking about out-of-school children. I'm not talking about the quality of teachers. Well, if we say we don't have quality teachers, now we have a lot of institutions. There is the National Teachers Institute. There are the colleges of education. We have universities have faculties of education and all this and all that. They are supposed to produce teachers. But what has happened in Nigeria is this: a lot of persons who are trained teachers, they don't want to teach. That is number one. So they have to leave the teaching profession to other fields. Some of them have become broadcasters. Some of them have become accountants. Some of them have become PR people. If you go around and you ask people around at random, what did you study? You'll be shocked. Some say, I had B.Ed this. I had B.Ed biology. But most of them are not teaching. And that is one of the reasons why we don't have qualified teachers.
Poor remuneration.
Now, basically poor remuneration. Then there are people who have single honors degrees, maybe in sciences, in social science, in arts, where they can't get jobs. So, the low-hanging job is the teaching profession. So they have to now go to the classroom to take whatever is being given to them to teach. Now, what I'm bringing out is this. You see, when NTI, Teacher Registration Council, says that they are not qualified, it's not like they don't have the knowledge to be able to pass down. Because if you look at the curriculum that we use and the teaching material that we use, you have textbooks that you give textbooks to children. Yeah. And if you have completed secondary education, you should be able to read the content of the textbook. So you'll be able to pass the knowledge to children. But if you talk about methods, teaching method, they may not have the teaching method. If you put them in a hall and say, okay, how do you teach social and social science subject? Because you have not passed through the curriculum studies, they may not be able to pass the exam. You understand? So there are a whole lot of things that come in. But that does not mean, that should not be an excuse for so many out-of-school children. We have people who did not study education, but when they enter into the class, they can deliver, they can teach. And they are saying that many of those who teach in private schools are not qualified. Not qualified because they don't have teaching qualification.
But Doctor, speaking about this no qualification, we've seen situations where an NYSC, a core member would come out and it's not even able to articulate a lot of things, which come back to the poor, education system. So with the budget that the federal government, plays on the money that would be dedicated for the education sector, do you think that we'll be able to at least use this training and retraining method in order to at least get these people that are not so qualified to meet up to the standard?
Oh, that is the strategy, actually, that you have to retrain these teachers. If you test them and discover that they have deficiencies, you should organize some kind of crash programs for them. If you teach, let's say, mathematics, and we now know that there are some basic marks that you don't even understand, so you'll be able to teach. You can put you in a studio, put them in a room and take them through, and they will be able to understand. You talked about some NYs who cannot articulate. Well, there are some who cannot articulate, but let me tell you, there are so many NYs that are very good. Because I don't like it by maybe we just emphasize the deficiencies. There are so many Nigerians graduates who are very, very good. Many of them are very good. They can do, can can defend their qualification. So we have some of them that cannot, but then there are so many. So I know that, we have issues with the education sector, but then if even the TRs, the Teacher Restoration Council, if they will do what they ought to do, we can remedy this situation.
All right.
If you can,
okay. Let's move on to other stories then.
That's all right.
Yesterday the president met with members of MPAN, the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, and a lot of issues were raised. And I would say from the reports that we saw, focal or central to the discussions was the issue of access to local newsprints, as a major challenge to many newspaper operators. How much of a challenge is this really? Maybe let's put it out there so that people know and understand that, as you pick up a copy of the newspaper, many people have no idea what really happens before they get access to them.
There are a lot of issues facing the newspaper industry. That is the newspaper production. Now, there was a time when we had paper mills in Nigeria. I remember when I was in primary school, there was this Apex paper, that was produced from, I think, around Jaba also. So we had a paper mill. And then you could get newsprint from Nigeria. But sincerely today, if you need newsprint, you have to go to either Eastern Europe, or you go to China, or go to some European countries, to get newsprint. And look at the cost of the dollar. You can imagine what it takes to get the newsprint that produces one newspaper, because the dollar, the naira has so devalued that you need 1,000 naira to get $1, and this newsprint is not sold cheaply. So it's the value that we even put out when we say we are printing a newspaper. It's heavily subsidized actually. The paper that we read on the street, if you sell this for 250, it's heavily subsidized. So it's a major problem. And I think, this is my opinion, that the federal government made a mistake, when they privatized some of these national companies, because I was thinking that a newsprint must not be privatized, shouldn't have been privatized, because those who bought the newsprint companies from the federal government when the privatization took place have not been able to produce one newsprint. If you go there, I understand that the machines are bad, and everything there is in a state of disrepair, to the point that if they want to put it in order or put them in order and then produce newsprint, the cost of producing newsprint from those mills will be more than the cost of importing newsprint, which is not right. And now, in many countries, newspapers are not seen as just transmitters of information. They see newspapers as another medium of educating the people. And what it means is this: there must be a measure of subsidy. I'm always campaigning that, you see, the newspaper industry, the information industry must be subsidized. And many countries do it. There are countries that will say, okay, we want people to see who their newspapers are read. I remember there was a state, I think it's in Europe. It's not the whole country, but a particular state. They discovered that people are no longer participating in civic activities, and they did a research. So why was this so? Well, everybody was online. You read your stories online. You do WhatsApp or whatever. But it was because there were no newspapers where people, physically hold, their papers, and they debate the issues on newspapers. So they asked, okay, what do we do? They now have to say, let us put money together and fund the papers. That means you are not asking the paper to publish a story in a particular manner, but want people to be involved in the activities, in the country through debates in newspapers. Let me tell you,
Nigerians, if you just need to go to the newspaper stand for you to be able to visualize this kind of debates.
Yes.
And, unfortunately, most times, some of the people that debate their stories, they just read the front pages and cannot even afford, perhaps, to even get a copy and so on. So.
But let me tell you the test case. If you edit a newspaper, for instance, and somebody sends a news release to you and says, please put it for me in your paper, and you put the news story online, you will think that you have not done it. You say, why don't you put it in the printed paper? You see, we think that online is it. But I'm telling you that even up to today, people want their stories in the print. If anybody wants anything, important, if they want to put anything out there, they want it in the print form. And so I think government must, find a way of resuscitating the paper mills.
All right.
I'm thinking that it won't be wrong for government to buy back some of those paper mills. Because if they are thinking of taking back some power, industries, the power sector, then you also think about resuscitating the paper mills by buying them back from those who bought them at
due to
giveaway
time,
prices.
of course, constraint, Doctor, we have to to stop the show here. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Theophilus Abba, Program Director of Daily Trust Foundation. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All right.